The throne room fell silent as the guards dragged Novelin forward, her threadbare servant's dress torn at the hem, her knees scraping against the cold marble floor. She kept her eyes down, just as she'd learned to do in the 23 years she'd served in the Doncourt's kitchens, invisible and insignificant among the glittering high fae who passed her without a second glance. "Bring the accused before the council," Lord Magistrate Thadrin announced, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling where starlight seemed trapped in crystalline formations. "This mortal girl stands accused of theft, of stealing a relic from the High Lady's private chambers." Novelin's heart hammered against her ribs. She hadn't stolen anything. She'd been in the wrong corridor at the wrong time, had witnessed something she shouldn't have. Lady Seraphel, meeting with hooded figures who spoke of overthrowing the throne. And now here she was, accused of a crime she didn't commit, about to be executed or banished to the mortal realm where she would age and die within decades. "A mortal has no place handling our sacred objects," another council member declared from his seat. "The sentence is clear: exile to the mortal realm at dawn." "Please, I didn't," Novelin started, but a guard's hand clamped over her mouth. From his throne, High Lord Jovan sat motionless, his silver eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He'd ruled the Dawn Court for over 3 centuries, a warrior prince who'd claimed his throne through blood and battle, feared for his ruthlessness and his ability to sense truth from lies. His midnight black hair fell past his shoulders, and his powerful frame radiated barely contained magic that made the air around him shimmer. He hadn't spoken yet. Novelin wondered if he even remembered who she was. Just another servant who'd brought him wine, court functions, another invisible face among hundreds. "Before we proceed with sentencing," Jovan said, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs, "I invoke the right of true speaking." The council members shifted uneasily. Lady Seraphel, beautiful and terrible in her gown of woven moonbeams, rose from her seat with barely concealed fury twisting her perfect features. "My lord, that is unnecessary for a mere mortal," Seraphel protested, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "The right is meant for those of our kind, not for—" "I have invoked it," Jovan interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "The accused will speak her true name before this court, and we will know with certainty if she lies." Novelin's blood turned to ice. Her true name. The one thing she'd guarded her entire life. The name her mother had whispered to her before dying, making her swear never to speak it aloud. Her mother, who'd appeared mortal, who'd worked in these same kitchens, who'd told her stories of ancient bloodlines and warned her that revealing who she truly was would bring danger unlike anything she could imagine. "I can't," Novelin whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, there must be another way." "You would prefer exile to speaking your name?" Jovan asked, and something flickered in his silver eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. "Why?" "Because if she spoke it, everything would change. The carefully constructed lie of her existence would shatter. The wards she'd woven around herself since childhood, the glamour she'd maintained to hide what she truly was, would crumble the moment her true name left her lips." "She's stalling because she knows she's guilty," Seraphel declared, descending the steps toward Novelin with predatory grace. "Mortals are all liars and thieves. It's in their nature." The other council members murmured agreement. Novelin could feel their disdain like a physical weight, their certainty that she was nothing, no one, worthy only of exile or death. "Speak your name," Jovan commanded, and this time there was power in his words, ancient magic that compelled obedience. "Now!" The command wrapped around Novalin's throat like a vice. She tried to resist, tried to keep her lips sealed, but Jovan's magic was too strong, honed by centuries of ruling. Her mother's warnings echoed in her mind, but she had no choice. The magic demanded truth, and it would have it. "My name," she started, and her voice didn't sound like her own anymore. It resonated with something deeper, older. "My true name is Novalin Stardaughter, heir of the celestial line, descendant of the first star that fell to create the dawn." The words left her lips like a thunderclap. The magic happened instantly, violently. Light exploded from Novalin's body, pure and blinding, the color of dawn breaking over mountains. The glamour she'd worn for 23 years shattered like glass. And power surged through her veins. Power that had been locked away, suppressed, hidden beneath layers of protective enchantments her mother had woven before her death. Gasps filled the throne room as her appearance transformed. Her mousy brown hair became spun starlight, silver gold and glowing with its own luminescence. Her dull gray eyes blazed with the opalescent shimmer of dawn itself. Ancient runes appeared on her skin, marking her as what she truly was, not mortal, not even high fae, but something far older and far more dangerous. The throne began to shake. The carved throne of dawn, ancient beyond measure, carved from a single piece of fallen starstone, recognized what stood before it. It had been crafted for the celestial line, for those whose blood carried the magic of creation itself, and it knew its rightful heir when it saw her. The throne bowed. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally. The massive starstone seat bent forward as if in reverence, and the magic contained within it reached out to Novalin like a lover recognizing their mate after centuries of separation. Every crystalline formation in the ceiling began to glow, responding to her presence. The very walls of the palace sang with recognition. "Impossible," Seraphel breathed, her face draining of color. "The celestial line died out centuries ago. Everyone knows this." "Everyone was wrong," Jovan said quietly, and Novalin finally looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the wonder in his silver eyes, the recognition of something he'd apparently been searching for. By the ancient gods. Novalin couldn't control it. The power that had been locked inside her for so long poured out in waves, magic so pure and strong that council members stumbled back from the force of it. She was dawn incarnate, starlight made flesh, the heir to a throne that predated every court in existence. Her magic didn't just fill the room, it dominated it, claimed it, made every other source of power in the vicinity bow to its supremacy. "Guards!" Seraphel shrieked, backing away. "Seize her! She's using forbidden magic to trick us!" But the guards didn't move. They couldn't. Novalin's magic held them frozen, not through force, but through sheer recognition of authority. Ancient magic called to ancient blood, and every being of Fae origin in the room felt the truth of what she was in their very bones. "Stand down," Jovan ordered, rising from his throne with fluid grace. "All of you." He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, and Novalin felt her magic surge in response to his proximity. His own power, vast and formidable, reached out to meet hers, and where they touched, sparks of silver gold light danced in the air. She could feel him now, really feel him. The depth of his magic, the weight of his centuries, the carefully controlled wildness that lurked beneath his controlled exterior. "How long?" he asked, standing so close she could see the flecks of gold in his silver eyes. How long have you hidden here? My whole life, Novelin admitted, her voice still carrying that otherworldly resonance. My mother made me promise. She said they would kill me if they knew, that there were those who wanted the celestial line ended forever. She looked pointedly at Seraphel, who had gone very still, her perfect mask slipping to reveal calculation and fear beneath. Is that so? Jovan said softly, and his voice carried a promise of violence that made several council members shift uncomfortably. And who, I wonder, would benefit most from the celestial heir remaining hidden? Who would have the most to lose if the true bloodline returned to claim what is theirs? You have no proof, Seraphel spat, but her voice wavered. This girl could be anyone, using forbidden magic to masquerade as... She spoke her true name under the rite, Jovan interrupted, his magic flaring in response to the insult. True names cannot lie. The throne itself acknowledged her, unless you question the ancient magics that founded this court. Silence fell like a blade. To question those magics was heresy, treason of the highest order. Novelin's legs trembled beneath her. The surge of power was beginning to fade, or rather, to settle into something she could almost control. She'd spent her entire life suppressing this magic, and now it was free, wild, demanding to be used. She could feel everything, every heartbeat in the room, every whisper of magic, every lie and truth and fear. She could feel Jovan most of all. His magic called to hers in a way that should have been impossible. Two complementary forces recognizing each other, dawn and shadow, light and darkness, two halves of a whole that had been separated for too long. Why did you come back to the palace today? He asked her, his voice dropping so only she could hear. You've been avoiding the upper levels for years. I've noticed you, Novelin Stardaughter. I've watched you hide in plain sight, wondered why you never looked me in the eye, why your scent carried something I couldn't identify. I saw something, she admitted, glancing at Seraphel. In the East Corridor 3 nights ago. A meeting that shouldn't have been happening. And so she accused you of theft to have you removed, Jovan concluded, his jaw tightening. To silence you before you could speak of what you witnessed. Novelin nodded, and Jovan's eyes darkened with fury. He turned to face the council, his power rolling out in waves that made even the strongest among them flinch. Lady Seraphel, he said, each word precise and deadly. You will tell this court exactly who you were meeting with in the East Corridor. Now. I don't know what this servant girl thinks she saw, Seraphel began, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. She's clearly unstable. Her magic is wild and untrained. I saw you, Novelin interrupted, and her voice carried power now, the authority of her bloodline. I saw you with Lord Marcellus of the Dusk Court and 3 shadow wraiths. I heard you planning to poison the High Lord during the equinox ceremony. I heard you promise them access to the Dawn Court's armies once you claimed the throne. The throne room erupted in chaos. Council members shouted over each other, some in disbelief, others in horror. The guards moved forward, surrounding Seraphel, who looked around wildly for an escape that didn't exist. Lies! Seraphel screamed, her glamour finally cracking to reveal the desperation beneath. She should have died with her mother. I made sure of it. I made sure the poison was strong enough. She stopped abruptly, realizing what she'd just confessed. The silence that followed was deafening. You killed her mother, Jovan said, and his magic turned so cold, the temperature in the room dropped. You murdered a member of the celestial line. Novelyn felt the world tilt. Her mother hadn't died of a wasting illness like she'd been told. She'd been murdered, poisoned, by the woman standing before her. The woman who'd smiled at her in passing, who'd never given her a second glance because she'd believed Novelyn was nothing, no one, no threat. You killed her, Novelyn whispered, and her magic responded to her grief, to her rage. Light blazed around her, hot and fierce, and for the first time in her life, she didn't try to suppress it. She was kind. She hurt no one. Why? Because your line should have ended, Seraphel hissed, dropping all pretense now. The celestial bloodline was too powerful, too pure. They stood above all of us, and we were tired of bowing. So we made a pact, those of us who remembered, who knew the old stories. We would end your line forever, and the courts would finally be ours to rule as equals. You will face the old justice, Jovan declared, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Trial by combat at dawn, you and I, since you sought my death. You'll execute me anyway, Seraphel laughed bitterly. What does it matter? It matters because she deserves to see justice done, Jovan said, and his eyes found Novelyn's again. The heir to the celestial line deserves to see her mother's murderer face the consequences of that crime. Novelyn felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with magic. He was doing this for her. Not just for the court, not just for political necessity, but for her. She saw it in his eyes, felt it in the way his magic reached out to wrap around hers, protective and possessive and gentle all at once. Take Lady Seraphel to the void chambers, Jovan ordered the guards. She will remain there until dawn. As Seraphel was dragged away, still screaming protests and threats, the council began to murmur among themselves. Novelyn could hear fragments of their conversations: shock, fear, speculation about what her return meant for the Dawn Court, for all the courts. Come, Jovan said, offering her his hand. We have much to discuss, and you're barely standing. He was right. The adrenaline was fading, and the weight of everything that had just happened was crashing down on her. She'd hidden for 23 years, and in the span of minutes, everything had been exposed. She was vulnerable now, known, a target for anyone else who might want the celestial line ended. But when she placed her hand in Jovan's, something extraordinary happened. Their magic intertwined, silver and gold light spiraling together, and she felt the bond snap into place between them. Not just attraction, not just compatible magic, but something ancient and faded, written in the stars before either of them had been born. You feel it too, Novelyn breathed, staring at their joined hands where marks were appearing. Ancient runes of binding, of soulmates recognizing each other. How is this possible? The celestial line was meant to bond with the line of shadow, Jovan said quietly, his thumb tracing the glowing marks on her wrist. My ancestors were born from the first shadow that the first star cast. Your bloodline and mine, we were made for each other. The council members who remained in the throne room gasped. A soul bond was rare enough, but a bond between bloodlines that predated the courts themselves? That was legend, myth, something that hadn't happened in over 1,000 years. I don't know how to be what they'll expect, Novelyn admitted as Jovan led her from the throne room, through corridors suddenly familiar yet strange. I was raised in the kitchens. I don't know how to rule, how to— You don't have to know, he interrupted, guiding her into his private chambers where wards snapped into place behind them, sealing them away from prying eyes and ears. You just have to be who you are. The magic knows. The throne knows. I know. His chambers were vast and beautiful, decorated in shades of silver and midnight blue, with windows that looked out over the palace gardens where dawn was just beginning to break. Appropriate, Novelin thought, somewhat hysterically. Dawn greeting dawn. I've ruled alone for 3 centuries, Joven said, turning to face her fully. I've had lovers, companions, allies, but never a mate. Never someone whose magic called to mind like this. Never someone who made me feel like I could finally be whole. Novelin's breath caught. The bond between them was growing stronger by the moment, and she could feel his emotions now, his loneliness, his hope, his fierce determination to protect her from anyone who might try to harm her. This is moving so fast, she whispered, even as her magic reached for his, seeking connection. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie, and now— I know, he said, stepping closer. We can take this as slowly as you need. But know this, Novelin Stardaughter. I will not let anyone harm you. The council, the other courts, anyone who might seek to finish what Seraphel started, they'll have to go through me first. Why? She asked, because she needed to hear him say it. You don't know me, not really. I know you've been brave enough to hide in plain sight for 23 years, he said, his hand coming up to cup her cheek, his touch sending sparks of magic across her skin. I know you came back to the palace to stop a plot, even though it put you in danger. I know you've been kind to the other servants, that you sneak food to the kitchen cats, that you sing while you work when you think no one can hear. You've been watching me, Novelin realized, feeling heat flood her cheeks. For years, he admitted without shame. I couldn't explain why. Now I understand. My magic recognized yours even through your glamour. I was drawn to you before I knew why. The bond pulsed between them, warm and insistent, and Novelin found herself swaying closer to him. The attraction wasn't just magical. There was something about the way he looked at her, the way he spoke to her like she mattered, like she was precious, that made her heart race. What happens now? She asked. Now you rest, he said, though she could see the reluctance in his eyes as he stepped back, breaking the physical contact while the magical one remained. I've assigned guards to watch over you, guards I trust with my life. At dawn, I will face Seraphel in combat and end her threat permanently. And then— Then? She prompted. Then we present you to the courts, he said, and there was something almost feral in his smile. As my mate, as the heir to the celestial line, and as the future High Lady of the Dawn Court. Novelin's heart skipped a beat. High Lady, not just acknowledged, not just protected, but elevated to stand beside him as an equal. It was everything she'd never dared to dream of. Everything her mother had wanted for her before fear had driven them into hiding. The other courts won't accept it easily, she said. If what Seraphel said is true, if there are others who wanted the celestial line ended— Let them try, Joven said with casual menace. You have my protection now, Novelin. You have my magic, my throne, my armies. And more than that, you have me. The words settled over her like a vow, and she felt the truth of them through their bond. He meant every word. This powerful, ancient High Lord who'd ruled alone for centuries was offering her everything. Not because she'd asked for it, but because their magic had recognized each other. Because fate had bound them together before either of them had known the other existed. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't know how to be worthy of—" "You are already worthy," he interrupted, crossing the distance between them again. "You survived. You stayed kind despite being treated as less than. You tried to save me, even knowing it would expose you. If that's not worthy, I don't know what is." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste and gentle, and Novelin felt magic seal around them, his protection, his claim, marking her as his in a way that any fae would recognize. "Sleep now," he murmured against her hair. "When you wake, we'll begin preparing for what comes next." But Novelin couldn't sleep. Not yet. There was too much adrenaline, too much magic coursing through her veins, too many questions swirling in her mind. "The equinox ceremony," she said, pulling back to look at him. "Seraphel said they were planning to poison you then. What else might they have planned? If there are co-conspirators—" "Already being handled," Jovan assured her. "My spy master is investigating everyone Seraphel has had contact with in the past year. Anyone involved in the plot will be found." "I want to help," Novelin said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "My mother's death, the conspiracy, I need to see it through." Jovan studied her for a long moment, and she could feel his assessment through their bond. His surprise at her strength, his approval, his reluctant respect. "You've been hiding your whole life," he said finally. "Are you certain you're ready to step into the light? Into danger?" "I'm tired of hiding," Novelin said, and she meant it. "They killed my mother. They tried to kill you. They would have exiled or executed me. I'm done being afraid." Something blazed in Jovan's silver eyes, pride, possession, desire, all mixed together. "Then we face them together," he said, his voice dropping to something almost rough. "But understand this, Novelin. I will not lose you. Not now that I've found you." The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. The bond between them thrummed with possibility, with the promise of something more than just political alliance or magical compatibility. There was real feeling there, growing faster than should have been possible, fed by the soul bond that recognized what they were to each other. "You won't lose me," she promised, and felt the truth of it settle in her bones. "The bond won't allow it." "No," he agreed, his thumb tracing the glowing marks on her wrist that mirrored the ones on his own skin. "It won't." The night passed in fits and starts. Novelin tried to rest in the chambers Jovan had given her, far more luxurious than anything she'd ever experienced, with a bed soft as clouds and windows that looked out over the starlit gardens. But sleep was elusive. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face, heard Seraphel's confession, felt the weight of the throne bowing to her. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer safe in her anonymity. She was known now, exposed, vulnerable, and powerful all at once. But she wasn't alone. Through the bond, she could feel Jovan's presence even though he was in his own chambers. She could sense his wakefulness, his thoughts circling the same worries and plans that occupied her mind. The connection was a comfort unlike anything she'd ever known. When dawn finally broke, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Novelin rose and dressed in the clothes that had been provided, not servant's garb, but a gown of woven starlight that responded to her magic, shimmering and changing color as she moved. Her reflection in the mirror was still strange to her. The silver gold hair, the glowing eyes, the runes that marked her skin. This was who she truly was, who she'd always been, beneath the glamour. A knock at the door drew her attention. "My lady," a guard said when she opened it, "the High Lord requests your presence at the Dawn Arena. The trial by combat is about to begin." Novelin's stomach twisted with nerves, but she nodded and followed the guard through the palace. Servants and courtiers stopped to stare as she passed, their whispers following in her wake. She caught fragments of their conversations, speculation about who she was, about the soul bond marks visible on her wrists, about what her return meant for the power structure of the court. The Dawn Arena was an open-air amphitheater carved from white stone, with seats arranged in tiers around a central fighting circle. It was already packed with spectators, not just Dawn Court Fae, but representatives from other courts who'd apparently arrived overnight when news of the challenge had spread. Word traveled fast in the Fae realms, carried on magic and rumor. Jovan stood in the center of the arena, dressed in fighting leathers that emphasized his warrior's build, his sword already drawn. The blade was made of shadow-forged steel, one of the legendary weapons created in the ancient times, and it seemed to drink in the light around it. Across from him, Seraphel had been brought from the void chambers. She looked haggard, her perfect beauty marred by fear and exhaustion, but her eyes still burned with hatred when they landed on Novelin. "We are here to witness justice," Jovan announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "Lady Seraphel stands accused of murder, conspiracy, and treason. She has confessed to killing Lady Astra of the Celestial Line and plotting to assassinate the High Lord of the Dawn Court. As is her right under ancient law, she has chosen trial by combat." "I regret nothing," Seraphel spat, drawing her own blade, a crystalline sword that glowed with corrupted magic. "The Celestial Line should have ended. They had no right to rule over the rest of us." "Then defend your actions with your blade," Jovan said simply. The combat that followed was brutal and swift. Jovan had centuries of battle experience, and his magic was vast and controlled. Seraphel fought desperately, using every trick and forbidden spell at her disposal. But it wasn't enough. Within minutes, Jovan had disarmed her, his shadow blade at her throat. "Any last words?" he asked. "She'll never be accepted," Seraphel gasped, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. "The other courts will tear her apart. They'll bow," Jovan said, and drove his blade through her heart. Seraphel's body dissolved into shadows and ash, as was the fate of all who died in trial by combat, returned to the magic from which they'd been born. The crowd erupted in shouts and cheers, but Jovan's eyes found Novelin immediately, and he crossed the arena to where she stood. "It's done," he said, and she could feel his satisfaction through their bond, not just at winning, but at avenging her mother's death. "Are you all right?" "She's really gone," Novelin said, still processing. "It's over." "Not quite," Jovan said, taking her hand and leading her into the center of the arena where everyone could see them. "Witness now the fulfillment of ancient prophecy!" He turned to face the assembled crowd, and his magic flared, silver light blazing around them both. Novelin felt her own magic respond, gold meeting silver, and their bond became visible to everyone present. glowing threads of power connecting them, marking them as soul-bonded mates. "This is Novalin's star daughter, heir to the celestial line, daughter of stars and dawn itself," Jovan declared, his voice ringing with authority and pride. "She is my mate, chosen by magic and fate. She bears my mark, and I bear hers. As such, by the ancient laws that founded the courts, she is High Lady of Dawn, co-ruler of this realm, protector of our people." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Co-ruler. Not consort, not symbolic partner, but true equal. It was almost unheard of, but the ancient laws were clear. A soul-bonded mate of the celestial line held power equal to the throne itself. "The celestial line was ended," someone called from the crowd. "How do we know she's genuine?" Jovan's eyes glinted dangerously, but before he could respond, Novalin felt something shift inside her. Her magic surged in response to the challenge, and she found herself stepping forward, her voice carrying power she'd never wielded before. "You doubt?" she asked, and dawn itself seemed to answer her call. The sun broke fully over the horizon, and its light converged on her, making her glow like a living star. "Then see!" She raised her hands, and the ancient magic of the celestial line poured forth. The very air shimmered with power as she called upon abilities that had been locked away her entire life. Plants burst into bloom around the arena's edges. The stone itself began to glow with internal light. Every fae present felt it, the undeniable pull of ancient magic, older than the courts, pure and vast and utterly genuine. The throne, even though it was back in the palace, pulsed with recognition, sending a shockwave of acknowledgement that every magical being in the realm could feel. "It's true," someone whispered, and the whisper spread like wildfire. "The celestial line lives." One by one, the crowd began to kneel. First the Dawn Court members, then the visiting dignitaries from other courts, even those who'd come hoping for drama or scandal. They knelt before the display of power that could not be faked, could not be manufactured, that resonated with truth in their very bones. Novalin stood there, glowing with her birthright, and finally understood what her mother had tried to tell her. This was who she was meant to be. Not hidden, not diminished, but blazing like the dawn itself, impossible to ignore or deny. "Rise," Jovan commanded the crowd, and there was fierce satisfaction in his voice. "You kneel before your High Lady." As the crowd rose, murmuring among themselves, Jovan turned to Novalin and took both her hands in his. Their magic twined together, and Novalin felt the bond deepen, solidify, become something unbreakable. "I claim you," he said, speaking the ancient words of binding. "Before witnesses, before magic, before the dawn itself, you are mine, and I am yours." Novalin's heart soared. She'd lived her whole life in shadows, in fear, in hiding. And now here she stood, claimed by a high lord, recognized by a throne, seen by everyone. And it was glorious. "I accept," she said, speaking the answering words that completed the ritual. "Before witnesses, before magic, before the stars that made me, I am yours, and you are mine." Magic exploded around them, sealing the bond permanently. The marks on their wrists blazed and then settled into permanent tattoos, intricate designs that showed the intertwining of star and shadow, dawn and night. Two complementary forces joined as one. The crowd erupted in cheers. This was more than politics, more than strategic alliance. This was a soul bond witnessed, a mating accepted, a union blessed by magic itself. It was celebration and promise all in one. "Ready to face what comes next?" Jovan murmured, close enough that only she could hear. "Being High Lady won't be easy." "Harder than pretending to be a servant for 23 years?" Novelin asked, feeling joy bubble up inside her for the first time in longer than she could remember. "I think I can manage." "I have no doubt," he said, and kissed her in front of the entire assembled crowd. A claiming kiss, a promise of more to come, a declaration that she was his and he was hers for all to see. The cheers grew louder, and Novelin finally let herself believe it. She was safe. She was powerful. She was home. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Jovan's spy master uncovered 3 more conspirators who'd been working with Seraphel, all nobles who'd harbored resentment toward the ancient bloodlines. They were given the choice of exile or trial by combat. All 3 chose exile, perhaps recognizing that Jovan's protective fury toward his newly claimed mate made him even more dangerous than usual. The other courts sent official acknowledgments of Novelin's status as High Lady, though some were more reluctant than others. The Night Court's High Lord sent a gift of shadow pearls with his congratulations. Summer Court sent a wary note suggesting future negotiations. The Winter Court sent nothing at all, which Jovan assured her meant they were waiting to see how things developed before committing to any position. Novelin found herself thrust into a new role with no preparation, learning on the fly how to navigate court politics, how to use her magic with intention rather than suppression, how to present herself as confident and commanding, when inside, she still sometimes felt like the servant girl from the kitchens. But she had Jovan. Through their soul bond, she could draw on his centuries of experience, his steadiness, his unwavering confidence in her abilities, and he, in turn, found himself softening under her influence, rediscovering compassion and kindness he'd thought lost after centuries of ruling alone. "You're thinking too hard," Jovan said one evening as they stood on the balcony of their shared chambers, watching the sunset over the palace gardens. "I can feel your worry through the bond." "There's so much to learn," Novelin admitted, leaning into his warmth. "Sometimes I worry I'll make a mistake that costs people their lives, or their safety, or—" "You won't," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "And even if you did make mistakes, which all rulers do, you have me to help shoulder the burden. That's what this bond means, Novelin. You don't have to face anything alone anymore." "I'm still not used to that," she confessed. "Being alone was all I knew for so long." "Then we'll take time getting you used to it," he murmured against her hair. "However long you need." But there was heat beneath his patience, desire that flared through their bond whenever they were close. They'd been giving her time to adjust, to learn her new role, but the mating bond was insistent, demanding consummation, demanding the physical joining that would complete what magic had begun. "Jovan," Novelin said, turning in his arms to face him. I think I'm ready to—" "Are you certain?" he asked, his silver eyes darkening with barely restrained hunger. "Because once we complete this bond, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way, and I'll be yours, forever." "I know," she said, reaching up to trace the sharp line of his jaw. "I want that. I want you." The words broke his restraint. Jovan claimed her mouth in a kiss that was nothing like the chaste one they'd shared in the arena. This was heat and hunger and promise, magic sparking between them as their bond surged in anticipation. "You're sure?" he asked one more time, even as he backed her toward their chambers. "Tell me you're sure." "I'm sure," she gasped, magic blazing under her skin. "Please, Jovan." What followed was fire and starlight, shadow and dawn intertwining in ways that transcended the physical. Their magic merged completely as they came together, the soul bond solidifying into something eternal and unbreakable. Novelyn felt whole for the first time in her life, complete in a way she hadn't known she was lacking. When they finally lay tangled together afterward, both glowing with residual magic, Jovan pressed a kiss to her temple and whispered the words she needed to hear. "You are my heart," he said simply. "For all of time, Novelyn. For all of eternity." "And you are mine," she replied, feeling the truth of it in every cell of her being. "My mate, my love, my home." The equinox celebration came 2 weeks later, and this time there was no poison, no assassination plot, no threat of death. Instead, there was joy, genuine celebration as the Dawn Court welcomed its new High Lady with festival and magic and music that lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Novelyn stood beside Jovan before the throne that had bowed to her, wearing a crown of woven starlight, and addressed their people for the first time as their co-ruler. "I was hidden among you for 23 years, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the throne room. "I lived as a servant because I was afraid of what would happen if my true nature was revealed. But fear kept me small, kept me silent, kept me from becoming who I was meant to be." She looked out at the sea of faces, some curious, some welcoming, some still uncertain. "I won't hide any more," she declared. "I will rule beside High Lord Jovan with honor, with compassion, with strength. I will protect this court as fiercely as he does, and I will ensure that no one else has to hide who they truly are out of fear." The throne room erupted in applause and cheers. Jovan took her hand, and their marks blazed with shared light, proof of their bond, their unity, their combined power. "She is my mate, my equal, my heart," Jovan declared, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. "Any who challenge her authority challenge mine. Any who seek to harm her will face the full wrath of the Dawn Court and everything I command." "And any who harm him will face mine," Novelyn added, surprising herself with the ferocity in her voice. "We are bound, in magic, in purpose, in love. What threatens one, threatens both." The message was clear, and it resonated through the assembled crowd, through the magical bonds that connected all Fae to their courts, through the very foundation of the realm itself. The celestial line had returned. A new power balance had been established, and anyone who thought to challenge it would face consequences unlike anything they'd ever known. As the celebrations continued around them, Jovan pulled Novelyn close, and she felt his contentment through their bond, his satisfaction at having found his mate, his pride in her strength, his joy at no longer being alone. "No more hiding," he murmured against her hair. "Never again." "Never again," Novelyn agreed, and let herself shine, not with suppressed magic or carefully controlled glamour, but with the full, blazing glory of who she truly was. She was Novelyn Stardaughter, heir to the celestial line, High Lady of the Dawn Court, and soul-bonded mate to the most powerful High Lord in the realm. She was no longer invisible, no longer overlooked, no longer afraid. She was dawn incarnate, and she was finally, gloriously free. The months that followed brought challenges, negotiations with wary courts, political maneuvering from those who sought to test her resolve, moments of doubt and difficulty as she learned to wield the authority that came with her position. But through it all, she had Jovan beside her, his steady presence and unwavering support giving her the confidence to grow into her role. Their bond deepened with each passing day, not just the magical connection, but the genuine love that had grown between them. They were partners in the truest sense, balancing each other, strengthening each other, two halves of a whole that had been meant to find each other across centuries and circumstances. And when Novelin stood in the throne room, addressing their court or entertaining visiting dignitaries or making decisions that would affect thousands of lives, she no longer felt like a servant playing at being royalty. She felt like exactly what she was, a ruler in her own right, claimed by fate and choice, powerful and protected, and precisely where she belonged. The throne still recognized her, the magic still answered her call, and Jovan still looked at her like she was the dawn itself, like she was everything he'd been waiting centuries to find. She was home. She was loved. She was free. And she would never hide again. What do you think about the story? Let me know your comments. I would appreciate each of your thoughts. Also, comment which state you're watching from so I can give you a shout out on the next videos. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay updated on our next uploads. Thanks for watching!